Hi friends, welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Jasmine. Today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite genuses of plants. Specifically, we are going to be talking about climbing philodendron. Most people know what a philodendron is if you're into houseplants. There's a ton of different varieties, but today we're going to specifically talk about the kind that tend to do better climbing up something such as a moss pole or a plank or any kind of support like a trellis. Most philodendrons, even the trailing ones, you can grow climbing, but the specific varieties we're going to be talking about today are the ones that really just do well when they're climbing. It looks like I have about 10 pots of climbing plants or climbing philodendron. One of the pots is a mixed basket that I'll go over, but ultimately I have about 13 different varieties of climbing philodendron. So I think we're just going to start with this little guy right here. This one is one of my favorites. This is the Philodendron varicosum, and let me show you a little bit closer. This one, it's pretty juvenile, but if you were to put it on a moss pole, it grows really quick, in my experience anyway, and I see a lot of people who have really big ones of these, which I hope to have as well at some point. But for right now, it's still very cute, and the reason I love this plant so much is because of the red that you can see. I think it's just very unique to this type of plant. It's also known as a velvet leaf philodendron, which I don't know if it'll pick it up on the camera, but if you see it in person, the leaves almost look like they have a velvet texture to them, and I think they do. They're very soft. So yeah, I think it's a really cool plant. Okay, next I think we'll do one from this side. This is my Philodendron Caramel Marble, and it's just a tiny plant. I got it maybe with these few little leaves at the bottom, about 4 leaves, and these two have come out in my care since I got it. I didn't spend very much on this. It's kind of an expensive plant if you get it more mature. I'll insert a photo of what the mature leaves look like, because that's the reason I got it, is because I love how the mature leaves look. It does have a new leaf coming in, and if you see, they come in with kind of a red color on them, and then they turn this kind of golden color, and then I think they eventually go green, but I believe that when they get bigger, they sometimes will hold on to some of that golden caramel color. Okay, next let's talk about this guy. This is the Philodendron squamiferum, I believe. I may be wrong, but I'll double check and insert the correct name if I am wrong. And this plant is really cool. I actually got this from, I believe, JC's. They had them on sale, and I think my mom and I bought it together, and we like split the plant, and I took a cutting, and mine's doing very well. This is the shape of the leaves, which is the most defining part of the plant, except for the petioles. The petioles are very fuzzy. I actually think this was sold as just a Philodendron fuzzy petiole, but there are a few different types of philodendron that have fuzzy petioles like this one. So I think that's just kind of a general term. And again, as this one gets older, I believe the leaf shape will get much more dramatic, which I think is really cool. And the petioles are also really pink, which I like. And then there's kind of a vein down the middle of it that you can see that on the back is also pink. So this is a really cool plant. I like it a lot. It's kind of a slow grower, but if you are interested in the types of philodendron that have this kind of fuzzy look to them, I definitely recommend you get this one because it's been really easy for me. Okay, next we are going to talk about this one, which if you guys have been on my channel for a while, you will have seen the unboxing of this plant and kind of the journey I've gone on with it. I've had this plant for probably 2.5 to 3 years now, and this is what it's looking like. There's actually two plants in here because I took a couple propagations of it, and this is the main plant, obviously. This is the Philodendron palmani, and I got this as a plant probably smaller than this little one at the very bottom. It was really tiny and it was really expensive. It was like $50 to $75 for just a small plant. And now you can even see them being sold. I had to buy it on Etsy because I couldn't find it anywhere else. But now I'm seeing it being sold in other nurseries. I haven't seen it at any big box stores yet, but I feel like that'll come eventually. I am starting to hear people talk more about it, which I think is why the price is dropping now. But this is a really neat plant. I like how it grows. I will say it is kind of a difficult plant for me. I don't know if it's just my care specifically, but I just find that the leaves get stuck a lot when they're unfurling. So like there was a leaf right down here. I don't know if you can see that just broke off because it got stuck, and I was trying to free it, but it just wouldn't happen. So anytime if you let this plant dry out too much, it will start to get damaged leaves like this. And I find that even if I try really hard to keep up on the watering, it still sometimes just doesn't work. I think this plant might do well in maybe like a big terrarium or in a greenhouse, but it just doesn't seem to like the conditions of my home all that much. This is the most recent leaf, and this is the one before that, which I love because it is not at all damaged. It's really pretty. I love the like shiny, sparkly bits in it, which is what drew me to the plant. I think it's really similar to Philodendron mamey. I think it's that one. I'll insert a picture of that one. I've never had that one, but it's much more common, I think. So maybe if you like this plant but you're nervous about it, maybe go for that one. Okay, next we're going to talk about one that's looking a little rough for me. I bought this plant. My mom bought the plant from JC's and gave me a cutting of it. And this is what the cutting looks like. It's not looking very good, but I'll insert some photos of a healthier version of this plant. This is the Philodendron Jose Buono, I believe is the name. Again, sorry, I'm kind of bad with names, but I will insert the correct name if I'm wrong. So it came with these two leaves. This was the top cutting, and move this down. This is the most recent leaf it gave me, which really isn't bad looking. It's just really small and kind of like it's bent really weird. But I have also kind of been underwatering this plant a little bit. I haven't been giving the best care it needs, but it does have some new growth right there. I don't know if you can see that. New growth right there, so that's a good sign. I do think this plant is pretty hardy just because it has been able to deal with my neglect, because I keep it on like the top shelf of in my plant room, and those plants typically get neglected because I can't reach them without my step stool. But it doesn't seem to care too much. The leaf still unfurled pretty well, but I am going to try to keep up on watering it better while this new leaf is coming in, just so I can have a healthy plant. The next plant on this list is one of my favorites. I think it's a very underrated plant. This is the Philodendron Golden Goddess. And I've had this plant for maybe a year or so now, and I got it as this tiny cutting, a tiny little piece. And it's grown so well just in like room conditions. I've never had it, I don't think I ever had it in my cloche that I have. It's kind of just grown really well on its own. I believe this is the most recent leaf. And some people don't think it's very exciting just because it's not variegated or anything crazy like that. but I really like the neon yellowish color that it has, and it contrasts really well with the pink veins and the pink stems. This plant can also get really big if you give it a moss pole or some other kind of support. Right now I just have it on this teeny tiny like twig. I really need to get it something better. But it grows really quick. I've never had any issues with it. Wallace had broken off one of the more recent leaves. So there's a broken stem right here, but it does already have new growth coming out. So it doesn't seem to be fussy at all. The leaves are very vocal. If they need water, the leaves will start drooping, and then I can water it and it'll bounce back really quick. So yeah, I think this one is very underrated and it's one of my favorites. Next, we are going to talk about my Philodendron burl marks. I have a couple cuttings of this plant. This is the main one of mine that I've had for a while. And I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this plant because it grows really well, it grows quick, but it's not a very compact plant. So the petioles are really long and they branch out and take up a lot of room. One thing I also have noticed about like every cutting of this plant that I have is that it gets a bunch of what are called extrafloral nectaries, and that's just the sticky sap that some plants get. And for some reason, some plants get it more than others. And it can be a sign of pest, but I've seen it on like every plant of this that I have in my house, and I have 3 of them, which are all cuttings from the same plant. But I've looked through all of them. They don't have any pest, and I think that's just what this plant does, because some plants just produce more than others. And the reason they do it is to attract ants to come and protect them from like aphids or other pests like that. But again, I don't see any pests on this plant, and as long as you don't touch it, then you won't get any of the sap on you. But I kind of don't like that because, you know, I like to be able to observe my plants and not have to worry about getting anything on me. But other than that, I think this plant is really cool because it does grow really quick. I also have noticed in certain places, like when I've gone to Florida, this plant just grows like outside. Like people just plant it in their yards, which I think is really cool, which I may consider doing that when we move to Florida. But for right now, it's just in this cute pot, and he's just kind of doing his own thing. He grows really well just with this little bit of support. I'll show you a close-up of the leaves too. This is what the leaves look like. And there is a variegated version of this plant, but I hear that it's much more difficult than this one is. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is probably my largest one, or at least in the largest pot. And this is I'm actually going to take it out of its cover pot. This is my Philodendron Subhastatum. I've had this plant for a long time. It's gotten pretty big. I don't think I've taken any cuttings of it, just because I like how it's growing. But let me give you guys a close-up of this plant. Okay. I hope you can see well. This is what it looks like. This is it's kind of an older leaf, but it still shows the plant pretty well. The back of it is really like vibrant burgundy red, which is my favorite thing about this plant because my favorite thing about this plant is the red backs of the leaves. They're kind of a burgundy color, really dark, and I think it's really neat looking. This plant isn't the quickest grower for me, but I think it grows pretty steadily. and it doesn't seem to mind getting a little neglected as far as watering goes, which is really nice. It is pretty vocal with its leaves, kind of similar to how the Golden Goddess is. I would like to get this on a moss pole eventually, because the only issue I'm having with it is that the base of the stem is thinner than like the top of it, which is making it pretty top heavy. Which is probably just because I didn't get it on a support quick enough. I'm gonna move it actually because it has a new leaf coming in. Okay, that's a bit better. I'll try to lower it down so you can see the top of it. I like how it grows because it's very, it doesn't branch out too much like the Burrow Marks does. It stays pretty compact and easy to take care of, which I really like, that it doesn't take up too much room. I have actually thought about getting rid of this plant a couple of times, just because if you look at it just up front, it doesn't look like the most exciting plant, but when you look at the back, I think that's really where it gets exciting. There are other plants, other types of philodendron that have the same kind of red back to it, but some of them can be a little more tricky to take care of. So if you want a plant like that, I definitely will recommend this one. Okay, I think that's all the plants on the floor. Now we will talk about this one. This one is one of my favorites as well. I think I also found this one at a big box store, and this is just one of the cuttings from it. I have a bunch of cuttings because I grew it for a little bit and it wasn't looking good, so I just chopped it up, and now this is the main plant of it. So let me show you up close. This is Philodendron SP Silver. I think there's also another name for it. Maybe it got like reclassified or something. But that's what I call it. And I love how like big the leaves size up. Like they size up really quickly. This is what the first leaf was, and then you can just see them really quickly getting much bigger. Another cool thing about the plant is the petiole. I don't know how well you can see it. Let me like lean over the table. You can't see it very well, but the petiole is also, I wouldn't quite say it's fuzzy, but it's textured. So it kind of feels a little bit like sandpaper, which I think is just a neat little detail of it. The leaves are very pillowy, and it's also, which I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense, but they just like lay so nice and like, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if I would describe it as a like velvety leaf, but the leaf is really cool, and it comes in with a little bit, and the petioles do have a little bit of pink on them as well, which is neat. My favorite thing about this plant specifically is that when you like shine a light on it, like a flashlight, or you hold it in the sun, the leaves look like glitter. So I'll insert a photo or a video of me doing that so you guys can really see the detail of it, but that's my favorite thing about this plant. I have had a couple issues in the past with like underwatering it and the leaves getting stuck, but I think that as long as I keep up with the watering well, then it's fine. And then the last plant on the list is actually a basket of 3 plants, so I'll just point them out real quick. This is Philodendron Silver Sword, also known as Philodendron Subhastatum. So there's the Philodendron Hostatum, which is the similar shape to this, but with the red backs and the green leaves. And this is the Subhastatum, which is like a silvery light green color. And this was a wish list plant for me for a long time, and I'm really glad that I finally got it. It took a while for me to get it, not because it was super expensive. It was kind of pricey, and I was waiting for the price to go down, but I also just was indecisive about when I wanted to buy it. So I think I got probably a decent size, like a 4-inch pot maybe of this plant for probably $25–30, and now you can find it much cheaper. So you can get this plant pretty easily. I've even seen it sold at a lot of big box stores. And there are three of this plant in here. I'll show you, there's three of them. And this plant, similar to the SP Silver, is very glittery looking in the sunlight, which is really neat. And if you were to grow this plant up a moss pole and mature the leaves, they get a really different shape to the leaves, which I really like. So I'll also insert a photo of the mature leaves later on. And the next plant in here is a Philodendron Pink Princess, which a lot of people dislike the Pink Princess, and I understand why. I probably wouldn't care to have this plant on its own, but I think it looks nice in this mixed pot. But it is kind of a difficult plant. Let me show you. I got this as a cutting from my mom's plant, if you're noticing a theme. I got this from my mom's plant, and this is the most recent leaf it put out in my care. I believe, maybe it's this one. Maybe it's this one. There's really not any like pink variegation on it. It's all just kind of like a burgundy color, which will happen to this plant if you don't give it a lot of light, which I think is why a lot of people don't like it. And also a big issue I've had with the plant is that the leaves always get stuck no matter how much you water it. So I don't know if you can see, this was the most recent leaf it was about to put out, and it broke off. Just on its own, it just got stuck and broke off. And that's kind of what a lot of the leaves tend to do. So maybe it's a humidity issue. I imagine this plant does want a lot of humidity. It is just one of those more difficult hybrids, I think, that you have to have just the right conditions for. But I still think it looks good in this basket as kind of like complementing the other plants. So yeah, I'm gonna keep growing it and just see what happens, but if it does die at some point, which it might, I won't be terribly disappointed. The next plant in here is, okay, the next plant in the basket is the Philodendron Painted Lady. This is, I hope you can see the leaves well. This is the most recent leaf. It's starting to get a little bit of that like painted look to it with like the dark green and the lime green. I got this plant from a local plant seller named Rhonda. And I think I spent like $25 on a little cutting of it because this plant is still pretty pricey. But it'll probably go down soon, I'm sure, as it's becoming more available in the market. But I really like this plant. It came with, I believe, these two leaves and maybe another one that has since then died. But I don't think that was anything like bad by my care. I think it was just that the leaf was old. And it's put out this leaf since I've got it, and this leaf is the most recent one. And when I potted it into soil after being in moss for so long, it put out this leaf, which is a little damaged, but that's really not that big of a deal. I've also, I don't know if this is just a theme with some climbing philodendrons, because it seems to be like an issue I have mostly with climbing philodendrons, is that the leaves get stuck. So this most recent leaf, you can see that the petiole is a little bent right here because it did get stuck for a little bit, and I freed it, and hopefully it'll like, I don't know, hopefully it'll go back to normal, or maybe it'll just stay like that, but it does have a little growth point right here, so that's a good sign. I haven't had this plant for a super long time, maybe like 6 months. So I don't know a ton about it, but it's pretty similar. It seems to be similar care needs to these two. So that's why I kind of wanted to just do a mixed basket of it, which I really like because especially if you have a lot of plants, it can be easy to get overwhelmed by them. And so that's what happened with me. So I just decided to make a big mixed basket of similar growth pattern and care type plants, just as a way of knocking down the number of pots that I had to water. And that's really helped, and I love how all these different colors complement each other. Alright friends, that is all of my climbing philodendron in my collection. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Comment down below and let me know which one of these were your favorite, or if there's another variety that I don't have that you would recommend I try. Definitely comment that down below because I would love to hear from you. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!